a little bit? What happened, what caused it, results?
Got hurt doing snow removal with my lower back. So I had a
Okay.
piece of equipment. So
All right.
I had to go to physical therapy for a while.
Muscle strain type thing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about a neck or shoulder injury? Anyone? Mark?
I blew out a disc in my neck doing snow removal.
Okay. All right.
Had had surgery, had a disc fusion done between the C5 and C6.
Okay. All right. Anyone else care to share?
Dislocated shoulder.
Dislocated shoulder, okay.
Dislocated shoulder.
Well, what we'll do today then, I won't take up too much of your time. I want to go over a little bit of an anatomy lesson for those of you who aren't real familiar with the mark of their anatomy. Spinal anatomy. Our spines are supposed to have a nice S curve in them, starting from your neck, kind of curves out into the middle back, and then curves back forward in the lower back. We have the base of the skull up here at the top, and then 7 cervical vertebrae in our necks, 12 thoracic vertebrae between our shoulder blades, and then the infamous 5 lumbar vertebrae. Those are generally the ones people hear about getting injured when they're lifting, push-pulling things incorrectly. Even going down to pick up a pencil, you can strain muscles, blow a disc out, whatever the case may be. In between each of the vertebrae are discs. Now, who's got an idea what the discs are for? What's their job? It's a cushion, basically, yeah. If you think of it like a couple days old jelly donut. It's tough and fibrous on the outside like the frosting around that jelly donut gets after it's sat around for a while, but on the inside is the jelly substance. What they allow us to do is to move and twist and bend and do all these things that we should and sometimes shouldn't be doing. It gives us a little leeway to get away with some things. The problem that we have with the discs is that, number one, over time, occasionally, some people, those discs wear away. Down below in their lumbar spine, they're a lot thicker than they are in their necks. Any ideas why? Say it again?
A lot less weight.
A lot less weight, you got it. That's a real simple answer. Got a lot more weight supported down here in our lumbar spine. As they wear away, the discs get dried out, the bones start moving closer and closer together, and that can cause something called stenosis, which is basically just a fancy word for arthritis of the spine. Something like what Mark had, a doctor can go in and he can fuse the bones together. Potentially that helps. We're supposed to have some movement in our spine, and when they fuse things, that makes things below and above it have to take up the slack. And a neck, like with you, Mark, you get away with a lot easier lifestyle after that sort of surgery than down the lumbar spine. Off of what the vertebrae protect is the spinal cord, and all these little yellow projections coming off of the spinal cord are the nerves that branch off to the different parts of our body. The other big thing that happens with our spines, or with the discs per se, are disc bulges, and that's what this big red splotch is. This guy must have bent over and maybe twisted to the left a little too far, or a few too many times, maybe picked up something too heavy. The disc will always allow or find a spot that's weakest on the disc, and that's where that jelly substance will move. Well, when it moves too many times, it weakens the outside walls of that disc, and pretty soon it bulges out, gets inflamed, a little swelling, inflammation builds up, puts some pressure on the nerve, and all of a sudden you have muscle spasms, or you have that sciatic pain. A lot of people have heard of that. You get sciatica, it goes down your leg, feels like your foot's falling asleep type of thing, doesn't go away. What else can happen is if it's a really weak spot, or you picked up something really heavy in a really awkward position, is that disc can actually break open, and then that jelly substance spills out. When it spills out, it's generally a recipe for having to have surgery. There's really no way to get that jelly substance to go back in. So a surgeon can make a little hole through the skin, incision-wise, clean out the goop, more or less, sew it up, sew up your skin, you're good to go. It's really not a big deal unless you've sat there for 6 months of suffering with it. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Yes.
With the sciatic, can they fix that?
The sciatic nerve comes through here, through our pelvis. Well, let's get to next. The spine goes down, meets up with your tailbone, which in turn meets up with the 2 pelvic bones that makes up the sacroiliac or the SI joints. A lot of times people will come into therapy complaining of back pain, but their pain is more down here in their pelvis. So it's on the back side, but it's not really a back problem, it's more of a pelvic problem. The sciatic nerve comes through here And on most people, it goes outside of the muscles, or under the muscles, excuse me, under the muscles of your gluteus muscles, your gluteus minimus actually. Sitting too long could potentially make that muscle tight, which in turn makes it spasm, puts pressure on the nerve, and you got that sciatica, not necessarily from the spine, but more from the pelvis. Your sciatic nerve is probably about as big as your index finger, so it's a really big nerve, and other nerves branch off of it as it comes off the spine too. Does that answer your question?
But can you get rid of the pain?
Oh yeah, you can get rid of the pain. Yeah, generally therapy can take care of it. You have to learn how to stabilize the pelvis, stabilize your lumbar spine, so that in time, it depends on how long you've been dealing with it. You know, if it's been a 6-month thing, it could take 6 months to get rid of it, but you have to start somewhere. Typically, they won't do a surgery for a sciatic pain if it's truly just from the sciatic nerve. It's something you just have to learn to, a lot of stretching, a lot of stabilization, strengthening around the muscles around the core, which is what I'm going to go into a little bit later too. Make sense? I'm assuming you're dealing with something right now?
Today.
Today, okay. All right, well, I have some stretches you can try.
How about 4 years?
Oh, wow, okay, so we have some work to do. All right, the muscles around the spine, actually, I should begin here. On the front side of the spine, there's a ligament that goes all the way up and down, and it helps stabilize from this front side. Your abdominal muscles are really important for helping stabilize the lumbar spine also, as well as improving your posture. So it's really good to have a good core strength, and core meaning stomach, lower back, and hips. The back side of your spine, you have your big gluteal muscles down in your pelvis. The actual spinal muscles are pretty small. They span maybe one vertebrae to one vertebrae all the way to one vertebrae down here to up here. So they're really small, they're really skinny. Their job is to do nothing but hold you upright all day long. They're not made to bend over, pick something up without using your legs, and then stand up with it with straight legs. That's where we get those muscle spasms from. If anyone's had a muscle spasm, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of the most uncomfortable things you'll ever have to deal with that hasn't involved surgery yet. So I plead with you, use your legs when you lift. We'll go over that also. So abdominals, hip strength, everything to help improve your posture, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, mowing the yard, whatever the case may be. Posture is really, really important to maintain a good stability through your lumbar spine. And if your lumbar spine is where it's supposed to be, technically speaking, the rest of your spine should be in a straight line too. Straight line meaning straight up and down, but still having that S-curve. You need to have the S-curve. When that spine gets a little more straightened out, it brings things back here where the vertebrae come together a little closer together. You can see there's not a lot of room for things to be off. If something's messed up, you get some inflammation, it brings in some fluid, less room for things to move, and then something's going to suffer for that. And it's usually one of the nerves that comes off the spinal column. So when I was talking via email with Rachel Huggins, she had sent me a list of things that a lot of union people have gone through in the past about sitting posture and exercises and everything. And I looked through it. One of the things I really didn't care for was the sitting posture. They had a picture of a guy sitting kind of like this in his computer chair. And I think that's horrible. Honestly, I don't mean to hack on it, but the way I've learned throughout the years with everything posture-wise is when you're sitting, you need to have as much upright posture as you can. So when you're sitting in your chair, who feels like they have to scoot forward to the front of their chair so their feet can hit the floor? Anybody? You know, okay. What do you do to prevent it? Can you put something underneath your feet so your feet aren't dangling so you can get back? Okay.
I had something like on the back of my chair, but it seemed to make it worse.
Really?
So I don't know if I just had it like in a weird position.
Okay, all right, sure. Well, ideally when you're sitting, if you're sitting for up to 8 hours a day at a desk, you want to have as much support in your lumbar spine as you can. So a lot of desk chairs, I mean, you can spend thousands of dollars on a great ergonomic chair, and it can be worthless for you. Everybody's individual. So what I recommend to people is to get something that you can bring home from home, like a lumbar support you go to Office Depot and buy, or even a small throw pillow that's maybe 12 by 12 inches high and wide. Pretty firm, it's just sitting on the end of the couch, and you're not using it anyway, so just bring it to work, place it right here in the small of your back so that when you're sitting down, you have that extra support. And then by 11 o'clock, when you're getting a little bored and tired at work, you're not slouching. So you got to remember those little muscles in the lumbar spine, if they start to slouch and it straightens out the spine, curves the other way, the little muscles, they're not made to hold you upright like this, they're made to hold you upright like this. So having that support there allows them to rest. If they're rested and relaxed, a lot less risk for injury. It may not be that you're getting injured while you're sitting there, but if they have a lot of stress on them when you're sitting throughout the day, and then you go home and you pick up a grandchild or a baby out of a crib, you bend over, and all of a sudden, ooh, you get that muscle spasm because the muscles aren't used to being in the right position. They've, for literally weeks and months, maybe even years of sitting improperly, you don't have the support there. All it takes is one time to break the camel's back type of thing. That makes sense to everybody? So a lumbar support is really important, whether it be actually store-bought or a pillow. You can bring just a pillow and fold it over, just something that fills up the gap right here in the small of your back. If your lumbar is supported, everything else should be supported too. If your lumbar is not supported, you start to sag forward. Now, does this look like it'd be comfortable all day long? This looks like a teenager at a Gateway. So my pants are actually pulled up. If your lumbar spine is sagging down, my shoulders are going to round forward, my head's going to round forward. So now I'm going from a good posture to a really poor posture. My neck hanging back like this. I have excess curve in my back. We're not supposed to have too much or too little curve in the spine. Everything needs to be as spot on as possible. You need muscle equality, strength-wise, flexibility-wise, all around the joints. So that poor posture like this, my head's forward, I'm here at my computer, I'm typing 8 hours a day, using the mouse, grabbing the phone. Over time, my shoulders are going to start running more forward, more forward, more forward. The muscles on the front of my shoulders are going to start getting tight. They're going to start pinching things together where my shoulder blade that comes out here, you feel the bone on the top of your shoulder, meets up with the arm socket, the ball and the socket. It sits, if this is your shoulder blade, and this is the ball and socket that goes into it, if I'm hunched forward, my shoulder blade's rounding forward, then when I reach up to my desk, my shoulder, the arm bone actually hits the shoulder blade. And that, just like with the spine and the vertebrae, there's not a lot of room for things. Literally, there's about this much space. And you got a lot of junk going through there, like blood vessels, nerves, tendons, ligaments. If everything's not sitting spot on, things start getting pinched, then you start having rotator cuff problems. Anyone ever heard of a shoulder impingement? It's basically just a pinching off of the tendon, one of the tendons of the rotator cuff. And that happens from sitting with poor posture. If your chair isn't high enough that you can actually let your arms be relaxed, you shouldn't be reaching up to your keyboard. You should have your chair up high enough that you can sit with your shoulders relaxed, elbows pretty much down by your sides and be able to do your typing, reaching for objects, your mouse, phone, everything that you use pretty frequently should be within arm's length of when you're sitting properly. If you have to really reach for something or be turning your head another direction while you're typing, that's not the right posture. The ideal world is everything's straight in front of you, everything's within arm reach. So your mouse is either on the keyboard tray, which hopefully everyone is able to use a keyboard tray, phone within arm's reach, document holder on the monitor, if not on the monitor, right next to the monitor on a document holder. Your monitors, think at your desk. When you're sitting, how high is the monitor itself? Do you feel like you have to tilt your head up or tilt your head down to look at the monitor? Ideally, where the actual screen is should be about eye level. The bevel around the computer can be a little higher, but the actual screen that you're looking at should be right about eye level. That way your eyes can do the moving as opposed to your head having to look up and down. You shouldn't have to move your head too far up and down or side to side for that. Does anyone have trouble sitting at their desk right now? If you do, and if you work at this facility, after the talk, I can come up and look at it real quick. It's usually a pretty easy fix, so just think about it. Any questions so far? It's a lot of information coming at you, so I understand. Sitting too long. That's another thing that causes problems with our spine and with posture. You get sitting too long, the tissues around the spine, they start, in a sense, getting dried up. The vertebrae, or not the vertebrae, the discs start drying up a little bit quicker because when we move, we get blood flow through it. If we have proper posture, muscles aren't straining, so they have proper blood flow. They're not getting inflamed. Everything's healthy. The tissue is healthy. So ideally, getting up like at least once an hour, whether it be to go to the bathroom, go get a drink of water, instead of emailing or instant messaging a coworker, getting up and going, talking to them face to face. It's better for you in the long run to keep moving. Our bodies aren't meant to sit still. They're meant to be moving, and our muscles are meant to support the joints that we can move. Think about when you get up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? You get up and you kind of rickety in the lower back, and you got to stretch out. It's because you've been laying for hopefully 6 to 8 hours at night. We get stiff. We have to increase the blood flow to our joints and the tissues around it to help everything be healthy. Okay, so proper lifting. Anyone have questions on proper lifting? We've all been taught how to lift correctly. What are you supposed to do when you lift? Lift from the floor. Bend your knees, right. Okay, what else? Maybe teach me today.
Don't bend the back.
Don't bend the back, right. What else?
Head up.
Head up, good. First thing, just with everything else, posture. You gotta have proper posture. So, everyone, what I want you to do right now is tighten up your stomach. See what happened? Everybody's shoulders came up a little bit higher. So proper posture starts right here in your abs. Before you go to lift something, whether it be a pencil off the floor or a 50-pound bag of grass seed out of the trunk of your car, tighten up your abs. It gets you in that proper posture where you're supposed to be. Then you're able to squat and use your legs like you're supposed to. So I'm just gonna use this chair as a prop. All right, so I tighten up my stomach. Now I'm supposed to use my legs, correct? Okay, so I'm just going to squat down. What's happening? Keep it in the chair with my knees. So what should I do? Come on. How about wide stance? Widen out my feet. Number one, I get my legs out of the way so I can actually grab the object I want to pick up. Number two, I'm a little closer to the object. I went from 6'1" to maybe 5'11", an inch and a half shorter. I'm closer to the object. I can now squat with my legs out of the way of the object I'm picking up. I can get a little lower, and it's easier for me to grab hold of the object. Now, let's say you're going to pick something up off the floor, but you have a sore knee. The gentleman in the back says not to bend in my back, so I can only go this far. I can't reach the object. Is it safe for me to bend over like this? This is a great visual for me. My spine is still straight. I'm still using good posture. My abs are tight. I'm going as far as my knees will allow me to go, whether you're flexible or not, have a sore knee. If I bend over my hips, my back is still straight. I can grab hold of that object, get myself back into that sitting position, and then stand up. Once I'm up, I can make sure that I have a clear path to walk with if I'm carrying it somewhere. What I see a lot of people doing when we do work screens for companies, they'll squat down to do everything right, but then when they pick up, they start doing this. And as soon as I bend my elbows, my shoulders are going to come forward. And what do we say about shoulders forward? It's not a good thing. It pulls everything forward. Think about mothers, fathers, grandpa, grandma, when they come to your house for Christmas dinner, and they walk in and they're using a cane or a walker. And you sit down and you start having dinner and you say, Grandma, how's it going? Well, I've been having this shoulder pain. I can't get up to do my hair anymore. It's having so much trouble. I have all this pain in my shoulder. Well, why do you think she can't raise her arms very high? Why do you think it hurts in her shoulders? It's because of posture. And obviously when you're 90 years old, you can't help it. It's just gravity pulls you forward. But we can prevent things like that from happening by doing it now. You can get yourself a little stronger. If your posture is tall now, 20 years from now, you should be able to alleviate those things down the road for yourself. Always make sure you have that clear path. I wouldn't want to have to pick up a 50-pound bag of grass seed and walk all the way around these tables. I'd prefer to get the tables out of the road so I have a straight line. That's always best also. Any questions on lifting? Makes sense? You know, it's not an idea. I'm sorry?
How'd you get down to the floor to get the pencil?
Well, there's a couple ways. Still, wide stance, squat down. My knees aren't bad, so I can squat down that far. If I have a problem, bend over, my back is still straight. My hips are bending, but my back is still straight. If all else fails, you do a golfer's lift. I just hit my hole-in-one, so I go down like that. Again, bending in my hips. Might have to hold on to something for balance, but at least my back is staying straight. Does that make sense? Like, it's not an ideal world. You're not going to be able to do things exactly perfect all the time. You do what you can to make it work for you. Everybody's different. Different heights, different size, shapes. Everything's different, so you got to do what works for you. These are just some ideas that hopefully you can try to see if things work better if you're having a problem, and hopefully to prevent a problem down the road. The biggest thing with sitting is that I think a pillow behind your back. If you can't reach the floor with your feet and you have boys feel like you have to scoot forward, put something underneath your feet. You can go to Office Depot and you can buy a footrest, or some people even take a little trash can and put their feet up on it, they tilt it over. Ideally, you're sitting back, you have that lumbar support, so everything can be in a straight line. You're keeping your abs tight. It's not something you need to go home and do a bunch of sit-ups and crunches for. Just tighten up your abs, and the more you do it throughout the day, the more it just becomes habit. You'll start doing it and you won't even think you're about doing it. It'll just happen. Pretty typically, when you go to lift something heavy, you just automatically brace yourself, so you're putting yourself at less risk of hurting yourself there in general. Rachel wanted to have me show you a few exercises that people can do throughout the day, so I brought a list, and I'll leave this with you. You can make copies and give it to whoever wants one. The first one, this is going to be generally for people who sit at the desk a lot. You know, we talked about that posture rounding forward and our necks getting all tightened up. So ideally, if you can get your hand behind your back, good posture, so you're tightening up your abs, and then you turn your head about a quarter way to the side and pull your chin down towards your chest. Should stretching be painful? Should it be uncomfortable? Uncomfortable, that's a good thing. If you're uncomfortable when you're stretching, you're doing it right. It shouldn't be painful though. If it's painful, you're going too far. Generally speaking, a stretch should last anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds at a time. And hopefully there are things you can do just throughout the day. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to do stretching at 8 o'clock in the morning and at noon and right before I go home. Just do it throughout the day. Whenever you feel like you have a little bit of tightness, stop and stretch. Another one is grabbing hold of a door frame. We talked about how rounding forward is bad, so we want to do something to go to the other extreme. Grab hold of an object, stretch to the side, turn your head to the side. Gets everything from your fingers all the way up into your neck to the base of the skull stretched out to open you up, so that's easier for you to sit with good posture. Just having the hand behind the back and tilting your head ear towards the shoulder the opposite way. Stretches out everything in the neck from the shoulder blade up to the neck. Who's done a hamstring stretch before? Everybody should raise their hand. Gym class, high school, everybody's done a hamstring stretch. What's the thing you remember from gym class in high school? You're supposed to bend over and touch your toes, right? All right?
Right.
Okay, now is that good? After all we talked about, is that going to be good for your spine? No, bending over is not good. Again, it's not an ideal world. Sometimes you have to do it. Hopefully you can prevent an injury from being a horrible injury because you're using as good a posture as you can, you're thinking about your abs, or you're hopefully keeping yourself in good shape to begin with. The hamstring stretch, putting your foot up on something, if you're standing, tighten up my abs, bend my other knee down. I'm getting as much stretch there as I would if I bent over to touch my toes. If I squat down this far and I'm still not feeling it, I move my nose forward like someone's pulling a rope right in the middle of my chest forward. That's a little more stretch. At all costs, I want to avoid doing this though. So that's just opening up my spine, opening up space for that disc to find a weak spot, have a pooch out, hit the nerve, and then I'm in the doctor's office. I prefer you don't have to come to therapy. You know, there's always someone, I'm always busy, so I don't need extra people. Now let's say you don't want to have to get up to do that stretch. Get to the edge of your chair, put your foot out in front of you, point your toes straight towards the ceiling. My abs are tight, and then I just lean forward. A little, literally 3 or 4 inches leaning forward, and I have as much stretch as I need. Anybody ever have tight hips? They feel like their butt's really tight, you know, hip muscles on the sides. after sitting quite a bit, this would be good for you with the sciatica. If you can, if you're able to, crossing your leg over like so, sitting up really tall, pushing down a little bit on that leg, and then a little move forward. You're going to feel that stretch right in the area where that sciatic nerve is. If you can get that muscle stretched out, it takes the pressure off the nerve, and everybody's happy. Okay? Plus the lumbar support. I think that would be really beneficial for you also. The quad stretch. Everybody's seen this before. You grab your pant leg or your ankle if you can reach, pulling it up towards your butt. Stretch out the front part of your thigh. I brought along some TheraBand. This is real common stuff you've probably seen in market therapy. For strengthening the shoulder blades. Rotator cuff and shoulder blade strength is really important for posture. So holding the band out in front of you, this is a pretty light resistance. Ideally thumbs up, and then just opening up your shoulder blades, opening up your chest to squeeze your shoulder blades. What you want to avoid is this sort of thing. You don't want to pull everything up. When you work your shoulder blades, you actually want to pull them down. So you may start at chin height with the band, and as you pull down, it ends up underneath your chest. It will stay straight. Well, maybe 20 or 30 of them, once or twice a day. This is something you could buy at Jim's Home Health, or even out at Shields, they'll sell tubing of it. It's all the same strength, different colors or different resistances, and it should say on the box that they get it from. This is a pretty easy one. You'd rather have more repetitions as opposed to more reps, or more resistance when you are talking about rotator cuff. A lot of repetitions for endurance. Another one for the rotator cuff, bending your elbows, pulling your hands apart, and squeezing your shoulder blades at the same time. External rotation of the rotator cuff, plus my shoulder blades are coming down and together. So I'm telling my muscles, this is what I expect of you throughout the day. I'm adding a little resistance. I'm doing it several times. One extreme at the computer to another extreme with the exercise, you should end up right where you're supposed to. It's just repetition. The more you do it, your body starts to accommodate to it, and you should stick where you want to be. Make sense? Be aware that the bands a lot of times will have latex in them if you have a latex allergy. It can be really, really bad. Any questions so far? Comments? Okay.
How about yoga stretches? Because some of those yoga stretches.
Yeah, yoga stretches, a lot of them, it goes back to that core stability. Before you do any stretch in yoga, you should focus on the core being tight. So, I've never done yoga myself, but I've seen some things where they get into this kind of position and then you're sticking your arm, but I can't think what the name of it's called. But it's all about core stability. So I get some stretching with my hamstrings and my glutes while I'm in still a straight position through my spine. Can you think of any other positions?
Well, I was thinking touching your toes, which you said not to do.
See, it's just, that's just one thing where I'm probably going to differ from a yoga instructor. Ideally, especially if you have a problem with your back, you shouldn't be bending over trying to touch your toes. Whether you're sitting, standing, anything, it's just not good for your spine. Your spine's not made to do this. Your spine is made to hold you upright. We're born with opposable thumbs. We're not apes walking on our hands and feet. We walk on 2 feet. We're supposed to be upright. If you're bending over constantly, over and over and over, that's, in the long run, it's pulling my pelvis forward, which is not good for it. Again, it's supposed to be back, like stabilized back here. Every time I bend over, I'm putting stress on those little muscles that are trying to stabilize. They're trying to hold me upright, and I'm going against them with the weight of my whole upper body. Half of my body weight's going down here. You got to add the weight of my body plus the pressures of gravity. It's a big equation you have to go through, but there's literally hundreds of pounds of pressure I'm putting on muscles that are maybe that big at most. Ideally, it's, again, an ideal world. It's not advisable, but if you get away with it and you're not having a problem, maybe you're flexible enough to handle it. It's not everybody's the same. Again, it goes back to that. Any other questions? Anybody have a scenario they'd like me to try to go over? Like you asked with the pencil. Any other scenarios? I'm doing something at home and I have back pain when I do it, or my shoulder's starting to hurt when I'm doing such and such at home. Gardening, cleaning, whatever the case may be. Sitting at your desk, neck's starting to get sore, achy.
Sometimes I get where it just, like this muscle right here
Right.
tenses up.
Up and down.
Yeah, that's probably the worst, I think, that I
Okay.
have sitting all day.
Okay, so, and with your hands up front, keyboard, all right. So, number one posture. So my abs are tight. I got my lumbar support or my pillow, something back there to keep me supported. Now, over time, if I don't have that support, I'm going to end up like this. So we get tall. I want to get my head from going from here, which is probably causing the problem. My head's out in front. Those little muscles are up on my neck too. And they can't hold that 8 to 10 pound head out in front of you. So we do what's called a chin tuck. Try to pull your head back, not down or up. It's straight back like you're a turtle pulling into the shell. You can make a double chin and you can't talk very well, you're doing it right. And when you do that, you should feel a little stretch through the muscles right at the base of your skull, down the neck. You ever get like tension headaches? Start back here, come over your head to your eyeballs. She's nodding her head. This is a great thing to do throughout the day before they start even. Lots of chin tucks. You can do this all day long. You can do it sitting at the stoplight out here on 48. Waiting for the light to turn green. Put your head against the headrest and push against it. You get a little stretch plus the strengthening pushing against the headrest. That's really good to help get rid of those tension headaches. Plus, this is where you're supposed to be. Here's one extreme. Here's the other extreme with the chin tucks so that when you rest, you're right where you're supposed to be. You go from one extreme to the other within reason. You should end up in that proper posture. Make sense? These other two stretches I showed you where you're going like this should help. Tilting to the side should help also. And you can make copies of this and keep it at your desk. I'll leave this with you so you know what I'm talking about too. You can take it with you to the store and just bring it back so someone else wants to use it. There are some core exercises I put on here that I actually have to lay on the floor for, so I'm not going to do that because the camera can't see me. So. Who's heard of planks? Side planks, front planks, they're great. That's one of the best exercises you can do for your core. You can hold it there up to a minute, awesome. If you're doing it correctly, you're completely flat, like you're a plank, you're a 2x4. On your side, on both elbows and toes. If it's too tough, from your elbows down to your feet, you start on your knees, going up on your side. When that gets easy, then you straighten out your legs. Same thing on your stomach. If you're up on your elbows and your toes and it's too tough, you start with between your elbows and your knees. Bridging. Anyone heard of bridging? Mark, I bet you have. Bridging, so you brace your stomach, you're on your back, your knees are bent up as far as you can, you brace your stomach and you lift your butt up off the floor. When you're up there, if it's not too difficult, you march your feet back and forth. So you're shifting your weight, forcing all the muscles on the one side that you're holding yourself up with to kick in so that you don't sag. Again, it's about proper posture. I'm on my back, my knees are bent, but it's still a straight line with my spine. And then the good old push-up. I think push-ups are one of the best exercises you could do, not only for your arms, but for your core. Because again, if you do a push-up correctly and you do enough of them, your thighs are going to start burning, your stomach should start burning because you're pushing yourself so hard to try to keep yourself in a straight line. If your butt's up in the air, that's not a good position for a push-up. So, with all that in mind, like I said, I'll leave this. There's 12 pictures on here. You got a question?
Yeah, what about like when you're doing sit-ups versus crunches? Because like I've been taught that you're supposed to just lift your chin towards the ceiling, but then some people say you're supposed to bring like, your whole body up to your knees, and that seems painful like on your spine, but also when you bring your neck up, it puts a lot of pressure on your neck, and that's painful also.
Right, yeah.
Is there a preference of which one's better for you?
Well, I think for your spine, the crunch is probably better, and for your neck, actually, the crunch is better. The tendency for people when they're doing sit-ups, put their hands behind their head, and then they come all the way up to their knees, but again, what am I doing there? I'm on my back, my knees are bent, and I'm bringing my my elbows up to my knees. What am I doing to my spine? Bending it. Again, that's not good. When in life are you supposed to do this? When you're going to a Chinese restaurant, maybe. No. Other than that, theoretically, there's no functional use for a crunch or a sit-up. If you want to work your abs and you want to work them functionally so that you can, number one, tone your muscles in your abs, the planks. The planks are a lot better functionally because you're doing it in a straight line, and that's where you want to be throughout the day when you're playing softball or soccer with your kids or whatever the case may be. You go out for a run, and if you like to run marathons, I guarantee you'll start having problems if you're not doing core work. You'll start having hip pain, knee pain. It all goes back to having a weak core. So in the long run, if you really enjoy doing crunches, I would say crunches would be better than sit-ups. The way I would teach a crunch would be the same position. I wouldn't put my hands behind my head. I'd put them on the floor. I'd pick a spot diagonally up from my nose, and I'd move my head towards that spot while I'm sliding my hands towards my feet. My lower back is staying on the floor. My shoulder blades are coming up. That's as much of a crunch as I need. My back is stable because I'm against the floor yet. I'm just raising my shoulder blades. Crunches and sit-ups are mostly just upper abs. You got to think about the lower abs below your belly button too, because those are the ones that really stabilize the sacroiliac joint. I've had this problem myself where I was stupid and I lifted something I shouldn't have lifted incorrectly, and my whole right side of my pelvis shifted forward on my sacrum. It got stuck, and for about a month I could look in the mirror and I was literally like this, and it hurt like hell, let me tell you. That goes back to that muscle spasm. It hurts so bad you can't breathe, you can't sleep, you can't walk, you can't do anything with a sore back. So on your back, barely just lift up your shoulder blades up and down off the floor. Let your hands slide towards your feet and then curl back down flat. That's the way I would recommend doing a crunch. And I could show you on the floor after the talk. You had a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, at the gym, there's a sit-up machine.
Mhm.
It's got like a deal that goes across your chest. and
Okay.
You kind of do a crunch except you're sitting on a chair.
Right.
You're bending down,
Mhm.
pushing the weight.
The
down.
weight, so you got the pad in front of you, you're kind of holding on like this and
It's like a
curling
lever
over.
that you're pushing down. Then there's an opposite one where you sit on the chair, and then there's like the same pad, like in
Yeah.
the middle of your back.
And then you push
sit-
backwards.
And then you push it back, so what I'm
Okay.
hearing you say, that's not a good.
Well, now it goes back to, does the crunch chair, sit-up chair have a little support for your spine at all?
No.
Okay, so what you want to do then, for sure, get yourself back as far as you can in the seat. You're holding on to the weight. It probably has a adjustable arm, I would guess, on it.
Yeah.
Put it back as far as you can to simulate laying down on the floor. Hold on to the pad, pick a spot straight in front of you, and curl towards that spot. So just make the movement probably half as much as what you see most people doing. And you'll probably notice that you do a few reps and you're going to feel your abs kicking in just as well as if you're doing the whole motion. When you're seated and you're doing that motion, most of the work is actually coming from your hip flexors. They're pulling your pelvis forward and your whole upper body forward. Whereas here, you're going to get, again, those upper abs. So it's a good ab exercise. In my opinion, there's better ones for function throughout life as opposed to just ab muscles to see in the mirror type of thing.
What about the back?
The back one, what you'll see a lot of people doing is they'll get it pushed really far forward, so they start in this position, and then they lunge themselves back, all the way back and forward. And they probably do it with a little momentum. Now, what have we talked about? Spine. Where is the spine supposed to be? It's supposed to be straight, right? So in that position, you start here. I'm going to brace my abs to protect my lower back, and I adjust my weight to whatever is comfortable. When you push back, get to a point where you can feel like you're upright. And that's as far as you need to go. The spine doesn't need to go like this. We should have enough curve in our spine. We don't need to force another 100 pounds hyperextending it backwards. So it's a small movement regardless of which machine you're using. Ab machine like a crunch, back machine just up to an upright posture and then back down. All the time I'm bracing my abs to keep everything stable. In the long run, I don't know if you've got a gym membership, in the long run, planks are better. Find a spot that's open, a stretching area that you could go try some planks. If you haven't tried them before, you do 20 or 30 of them on each side. Next morning you're going to wake up and your abs are going to be sore.
I mean seconds, right?
Well, no, 20 or 30 reps. So you get on your side, you lift yourself up and hold it maybe 5 or 10 seconds, go down. And do 20 or 30 of those in a row on both sides. Tomorrow morning you should wake up and your abs should be sore, if you've never done it before. You could do all the crunches in the world. They're just going to work right here, the rectus abdominis. You get on your side and you do a plank. Not only am I working my shoulder stability, my posture straight because I'm lifting myself up. I'm in a different position, but I'm still straight in my spine. My side abs are working, my front abs are working, my lower back is working, my hip muscles that are used to help keep our pelvis level when we walk and run and step up onto a curb. Those muscles are working to help push myself up. My thigh, quad, and hamstring are working to keep my knees straight. everything on that side that you're on is actually kicking in to help stabilize the spine and stabilize your posture. So in the long run, planks in my mind are a lot better exercise than crunches. You can do crunches, there's nothing wrong with them, but I think there's things that are better.
And there's another one where you actually turn your back. That's probably
Avoid that
the
one.
worst.
Avoid that one, that's all I'll say. Avoid that one. I don't know why they put that into gyms. We have one at Proactive too, and people love it, but it's just not good for your spine to be twisting forcefully against resistance. I mean, think about when we're lifting. That's one thing actually I didn't say. You shouldn't be lifting and then twisting. You should be moving your feet. Are you kneeling when you do that one?
No, sitting.
Sitting, okay, yeah, that's just not good. Your spine is made to be in a straight line and not to be twisting. There's not a lot of motion this way. There's a lot of motion this way, but we have to stabilize it with our abs and
See,
our other muscles.
I was kind of thinking about golf, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of a violent.
Now, golf is more of a whole body movement.
Yeah.
You get the whole body twisting at one time, that's fine. When you isolate it, you're gonna start having problems sooner or later. It's just, especially if your discs are wearing away. Discs will wear away regardless of how old you are or how young you are. If you have it genetically in your system that your discs are gonna wear away, they're gonna wear away. The closer they get, you start getting bone on bone, you get them rubbing like this. Just think how good that would feel, bone on bone. If you've ever known anyone who's had a knee replacement, ask them how great it felt before they had the knee replaced. Creaking and cracking and sore going up and down stairs. It's the same thing in our spines. You don't want bone touching bone. You need to get the muscles strong around it to stabilize it. Any other questions?
Push-ups, if you can't get down on the floor. you can push up.
Okay. Can you go against the wall and do push-ups? Not like this. Not like this. I stabilize my spine. I step back as far as I think I'm comfortable. Squeeze my gut real tight. I go down as far as I'm comfortable with. If I can go further, great. If it's too easy, put my feet back. If I'm back pretty far off my feet, it's pretty easy. You go to your kitchen counter. Put your feet back. Tighten up my stomach and do a push-up there. Not as much body weight, not as much gravity, but still the same idea. It's kind of a plank, but you're getting a lot more work with your upper body. I'd start with the wall and see how you do with that. Just gradually move your feet back. You don't want your hands way up here. Think about chest tight with your hands, a little past your shoulders. That should work good for you.
Sorry, one other.
That's all right.
So, when, like, somebody's back pops, you hear it pop, what
Mhm.
is the overall, like, what does that do to the health of your back over time?
There's really nothing bad about it necessarily. It's like cracking your knuckles. What it does is releases pressure around the joint. It creates endorphins that come in, which makes it feel better. You crack your knuckles, you feel better, you feel looser. That's all it's doing. It's not really damaging anything. Now, the way you do it could be damaging. You know, you have somebody pick you up, they grab hold of your arms, and they pick you up, and they jump up and down. You hear the spine crack all the way up and down. That's probably not so good for you. But if you bend back and get a little bit of a twist and it cracks, just by moving sometimes you'll crack too if you've been in one position too long. That's not really a big deal. I wouldn't do it over and over and over again, but here and there it's probably not going to hurt anything. Again, it's not an ideal world. We do things we're not supposed to. The idea behind it is if you can keep yourself strong, stable through your core, you have good nutrition. I'll go all the way out there and say, try not to smoke. I'm not going to get any smokers to quit smoking by standing up here. But if you don't have good nutrition, you don't have good, healthy nutrients going through your system. If you're smoking, you don't have good oxygen going through your system. You can't heal yourself. If you have a small injury and you're not eating well, or you're smoking, you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to make a small injury last months as opposed to maybe a couple days. You could have healed up a lot quicker if you were just a little healthier. That's my soapbox.
What do you think of the balls for sitting on?
Perfect. That'd be another thing. Sitting, if your supervisors are okay with it, and you have one, bring it to work. When you sit on that ball, you're forcing yourself to have to use your core to stabilize. If you don't sit yourself upright and you let yourself go, the ball rolls right out from underneath you, you end up on your head. What I tell people for therapy-wise, when you're doing that for an exercise, get as tall as you can, so again it goes back to those core muscles. Abs are tight, so I'm straight up and down. If I sit like this, the ball rolls out and I'm falling on the floor. Put your feet together. That makes your base of support a little smaller, makes those core muscles have to work a little harder. Now, I wouldn't use it all day long, maybe an hour out of the day, use it. Because anything extreme all day long or too much, you're gonna start having problems that way too. You'll get too fatigued and then you'll start having problems.
Can you use it for like your exercises and stuff?
Yeah,
Push-ups
absolutely.
or Squats or stuff like
Yeah,
that?
yep, you could put it behind you, use it as a baseline when you do a squat. You touch the ball with your butt and come back up. Put it behind your back and lean up against the wall and do a wall squat. It rolls up and down. It supports your spine a little better than an actual wall squat would because the ball will curve to the curve of your spine. Sitting on it while you're doing these exercises. You could do that too. Sit on it nice and tall, do the rotator cuff exercises. Sit in front of the TV. That bridging one where I talked about where you lift up and you march, you could sit on the ball, tighten up, and then march back and forth. You're shifting your weight side to side. More upright is more lifelike than laying on your back, but not everybody has a big Swiss ball at home. So that weight shift makes everything have to kick in on this side to stabilize, so I don't do this. If I do this and I'm on the ball, I'm on the floor. Other questions? Well, that's all I have then. If anything does come up, you can ask Rachel to get a hold of me and I can maybe even come back out and talk with you one-on-one, or we can converse via email. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.